Foi, né? Tem. Ah, isso aí não tem não, isso aí não tem não. Isso aí é justamente é o que eu falei para ela. Mas eu vou falar com ela agora, certo? Tá bom? 30 dias para o primeiro atendimento. Urgência e emergência é a partir é a partir do pagamento do boleto, certo? Pagou, já a partir de 24 horas, 24 horas, precisamente isso, certo? Certo. Tá bom, tá certo. Tem que ficar naquele que vai ser determinado, né? Certo, sem menor sombra de dúvida. Tá bom, menina. Valeu, valeu. Eu passei para ela agora a tabela do...
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this series of talks promoted by the United States Spiritist Federations every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Today, I'm so very happy to be here to host this talk by our special guest, Marcelo Medeiros. Marcelo will be discussing gossiping in the times of Jesus and now, a Spiritist view of social media. Before we turn it over to Marcelo, let's do our opening prayer. Appreciate if all of us can close our eyes and let's open our hearts and minds and be open to all the spirits of light who are here with us, present, along with all of our benefactors who are here to guide us during our journey on earth. May we all be blessed. May our dear friend Marcelo receive the inspirations during the talk, and that we are all touched by his talk. So be it. Marcelo, welcome. Hope you're doing well.
Hi, Marcia. Welcome. Thank you so much for this invitation. I'm very happy to be here and to share a little bit this study about this topic. Social media is a topic that I like very much to study, and also to bring some teachings from Spiritism and from the times of Jesus, and to show how we can try to apply them to our daily life, especially when we are talking about the social media, that it seems something so very new to all of us. Yeah.
Yes. So it is really, really great, right? So as Marcelo said, he's going to be talking about gossiping, the social media, and the Spiritist view of that. So I really thank you for being here, for taking this on. I think it's great for all of us. And it is a beautiful morning, right, here in Atlanta. Hope everyone is fine. Before Marcelo can really touch us with this incredible message, let me introduce him formally. Marcelo Medeiros was raised in a Catholic family, and he joined Spiritism in the 2000s. He's been a contributor member of the Spiritist movement in the US since 2012. He currently provides assistance in the area of media communication. He is currently living here in Atlanta, where he works as a journalist. I would like to take a moment to remind everyone in the audience to please send your questions. We will allow time for us to answer those questions once Daniel concludes his presentation. I'm sorry, Marcelo. So up to you, Marcelo, please.
Thank you. So the idea to bring this topic, gossiping the times of Jesus and now a Spirit's view on social media, is because we know that gossip has been here on earth in our lives since maybe when we started to talk, to communicate to each other. So it's not something new, something very old in our society. And I brought some examples for us to see how it happened in the times of Jesus, like how Jesus faced gossiping, and also how we deal with that today. And the idea is to bring those teachings that we have from Jesus and from the high elevated spirits who worked with Allan Kardec to develop to the Spiritist doctrine, so we can see how those teachings from the 1800s, they are very actual. They can be and must be used by us in our social and daily lives, because many times we may think, okay, Kardec brought those teachings in the 1800s, and now we are living a different era, so that doesn't apply. But as we know, as we see, those teachings, they should be applied for us. They are here for us to study and to try to improve ourselves. And as social media is something, we can say something new in our lives, because it's been here for like 5-10 years from now, and now we use it, especially now, like with the pandemic, we are using that even more to be connected to each other. So how we can do the best use of social media without going to the same mistakes we've been making through many centuries. So the first example that I bring here is from the book The Good News, Boa Nova, by Humberto de Campos, channeled by Francisco Xavier. I brought a lesson from chapter 10. The name of the lesson is Forgiveness. Later on, I will explain why the name of the lesson is Forgiveness. But in this lesson, Humberto de Campos tells us a passage from Jesus when Jesus is going to Nazareth to preach, to bring the good news to the people there. And he was already like spreading the good news at that time. So Jesus and his disciples, people knew who they were. And as we can imagine, many people there didn't like what Jesus was bringing and all the different teachings that he was bringing. For example, we could think about the doctors of law, as we have many examples in the gospel. Many of them, they didn't like what Jesus was talking. They thought that Jesus was bringing different teachings than the Mosaic law. And we can also think about other people in society who didn't see with good eyes all the messages and all the teachings that Jesus was bringing at the time. So Jesus, in this passage, right in the beginning of this chapter, he is talking to the disciples, and then Humberto de Campos says that the most selfish people pretended to see the generous prophet as a common conspirator. So that's the way many of them saw Jesus. And they said he was a common conspirator who wished to intensify the popular rage against the nomination of Herod. And others assumed him to be an unusual wizard who should be avoided. So Humberto de Campos brings some opinions of people at that time, and for us to see that we know Jesus wasn't accepted by most of society at that time. So we can see here some of the challenges that he faces and what some people were thinking about Jesus. And what did they do as they thought Jesus as a conspirator, as a wizard? So there were more than a few opponents to his ideas of renewal who arrived in the tiny village before him. So they knew Jesus was going there, so they arrived before Jesus. And they were seeking to neutralize his actions through false news and to demoralize him by feeding people with false information conducted by some Nazarenes. So what we see here, we see two things very common in our world today, the fake news. Like they were already like creating fake news about Jesus, and they were spreading that. So they were gossiping, because at the time they didn't have like newspapers, they didn't have TV, radio, internet, nothing like that. So the best way, let's say that, for them to spread the news or to spread the rumors that they were willing to spread was by talking to each other. So that's what we call gossiping. So as we see here, Jesus was a victim of gossiping because people were using that in a way to try to avoid others to believe in what he was saying, and in that way to block the spreading of the good news as Jesus was bringing at that time. So this is one of the examples that we can bring of how Jesus was being a victim of gossiping at that time. And then I brought here another example this is from the gospel about the story of the Pharisee and the tax collector. So this is a story that Jesus told to the disciples at that time. So that it is another example and another way for us to see how gossiping exists in our lives and since that time. So in this story, like Jesus also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and treated others with contempt. So 2 men went up into the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, prayed thus, God, I thank you that I'm not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week, I give tithes of all that I get, but the tax collector, standing far off, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. So Jesus says, I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself must be humble, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. So I brought this story because I thought very interesting how we many times we say, okay, gossiping, we can gossip, like bringing some gossiping to others, to people we know. But in this way, I see we can actually see how that man, the Pharisee, was gossiping to God. Let's imagine he went there to the temple to pray. So he went there to connect to God and to talk to God. And what does he do? He goes and he starts to talk bad things about the tax collector, who was also there talking to God, connecting to God. So in a way, instead of him asking what he wanted or having this conversation, like a conversation from him to God only about his issues, he started to say, okay, I'm very different from the other men, like who are unjust, adulterers, or the tax collector here, who he was starting to say some bad things about others in a way for God to see him like as he were better than the others. And and that's very different, like this view of gossiping, because many times, as I said, we think that we are gossiping to other people here in society, but we don't imagine that we may be trying to gossip to God. And many times that happens when we pray, we go and we say to God that I think that I deserve this job more than that or that other people. I think that I deserve to have a better life than this or that one because I'm a better person than them. So in this way, we are comparing ourselves to others and criticizing others, like seeing the issues that they have to our own eyes, and using that as a way to bargain with God, saying, okay, these people, they do those wrong things and I don't. So I think that I deserve more than that. But like bringing and reinforcing what the others have as we see as bad things, and reinforcing what we see as the values that we already have. So this is also a way to gossip. So that's what I brought 2 examples. The first one was Jesus being a victim of gossiping, like people gossiping about him in the village. And this is like the Pharisee gossiping to God about the tax collectors and all the ones around him in society. So 2 different ways for us to see how gossiping has been in our lives since that time. But I already brought another one here, another example also from the chapter 10 from the book Good News. So because remember, we saw Jesus being a victim of gossiping. And now here I brought what Philip was telling Jesus during the same conversation, like the same story. So Jesus was being victim of those fake news. And then we see later on the story, Philip talking to Jesus and saying that. I need to add that some of the companions were unbearable during the trip to Nazareth. Some accused me of being a bully and disruptive. Others accused me of not understanding your teachings. So we see here, like, Philip was also being a victim of those bad comments among them, like about the companions, the disciples. So we can see, and we have many different examples, not only in the books by Humberto de Campos, in the book Good News, we have like in Jesus in the Home, and if we go to the Gospel in the Bible, we see many examples that we see that the relationship among the disciples in the beginning, it wasn't a perfect one. We see many disputes among them. And in this example here, we can see Philip talking to Jesus and bringing some examples of what was happening. So the disciples were talking among themselves, like one saying bad things to each other. So they were gossiping among them during the trip with Jesus. And so we can see, like, many times we also have gossip within the community where we are, like with the ones who are our friends, our family members, the ones we work with. So we can see those gossipings, those little gossips in many places in our society. And now I brought also another example from this book, Estante da Vida, by Brother X, who is also Humberto de Campos, channeled by Francisco Xavier, because in this example, now I want to bring something more recent. So this story, Humberto de Campos, Brother X is talking a story that happened in the last century. So he's talking about a woman who was a victim of gossip herself. So he's talking like there were two women, two friends talking in a bus, like they were taking a bus and they were talking to each other. And one of them, she was saying that she loved very much Dionysius, and she was a married man, and she was talking about Dionysius. So the other one said, "But Dulcie, do you even want Dionysius as much as your husband?" And she said, "Not that much, but I can live without both of them." So that was what they were talking about. And one of their neighbors was there listening to that conversation, and she just listened to that part, but she was already in the bus before, and she saw that that woman, Dulcie, was previously talking to another man in the same bus. So she make some connections, and when she goes home, she talks to her husband. "I saw it with my eyes. A big man followed her, showing gestures of love, and finally on the bus, she confessed to Dona Cecilia. She even said that she cannot live without her husband and the other." So she saw two different things. First, she saw a big man going with her to the bus. And then inside the bus, she listened to that conversation, just to a part of the conversation. And so she thought, yeah, that man is her lover and she's cheating on her husband. And what does she do? She goes to her home, she arrives then, and the first thing she does is tell the story to her own husband. But what happens after that? Humberto de Campos says that the neighbor's husband worked with Dulcie's husband, so they were co-workers. And the next day, when they go to work, he tells the story to the other man, and he says, "Okay, my wife saw your wife talking to another person and with another man, so she's cheating on you. Open your eyes." So he tells the story, the same story that her wife told him. He tells that story to his co-worker, and the coworker is very upset. He went to his home. During in the middle of the day, the middle of the work, he left and he goes home, and because he wants to talk to his wife to see what is happening. But when he arrives home, he catches his wife on the phone, and she saying, this companion, like his wife, spoke casually on the phone in the bedroom. Yes, no problem. Today, 3 o'clock, my husband can't know. So he only listens to that part of the conversation, and then it's the end of the world to him. He thinks, okay, yeah, she's cheating on me, and then he goes, instead of talking to his wife, he goes for a walk. He stays for a while outside, and then he comes back. When he comes back, he sees a man in his bedroom, very close to his bed. He only sees that, and then he thinks, okay, that's true, she's cheating on me, and he decides to commit suicide. So imagine all this happened, like beginning with the story that the neighbor heard in the bus. And when the wife knew about what happened, that her husband was dead, she was devastated. She didn't understand what was going on, because in the end, what was happening, and in the next day during the funeral, people started to spread what happened, that she was cheating on him, and actually it wasn't true. So the truth was that Dionysius was her cat. She had a pet. That was the pet's name, the cat's name, and the cat was very sick. So that big man that was with her in the bus was the vet that was taking care of the cat. And she was just saying to her neighbor that she loved the cat very much, and that she couldn't see the cat being ill, and she didn't know what was going to happen with the cat. So that was the conversation. And the other conversation that she was having on the phone, like she was talking about 3 o'clock, the husband can know, because she was buying a new mattress. And she wanted to surprise her husband with a new mattress. And the man that the husband saw in his bedroom was the delivery man who was bringing the mattress to their home. So in the end, it was not at all true what the neighbor told him and all these gossips. So in the end, it wasn't true. And when the neighbor who started everything found out what had happened, she says, he died for a foolish thing. We say certain things just to speak. Okay, so even then, she didn't realize how serious was that gossip that she brought to her husband, that initiated everything. So she said it was something foolish, so she gave no importance to that. And that's something that we all do in our daily lives. Many times we say little things, we take some conclusions without knowing the whole story. And it's very easy for us to go to a friend, to go to a family member, to go to a coworker, and to tell that without even knowing if that is true or not. And we don't imagine all the consequences that may have in our lives. And at that time, when Brother X, he brought this story, we didn't have internet, social media, we didn't have this so fast communications that we have today. But imagine that today. We know that today it's very easy to spread. We have WhatsApp groups when we can share information very fast, and we do that. Many times it's easy to share some fake news or fake information about people without knowing if that is true or not, because we receive something and immediately we have that need to go and to spread that to others. And today is very easier to do that. Can be also on social media. If we go to Twitter, to Instagram, to Facebook, we can see a picture in some place, and like we can see a picture of someone in Instagram and make some conclusions just by seeing that pictures without knowing the whole story. So that's a way that I brought this story, because I wanted us to try to bring that to the society that we have today, and to see how many times don't we do that. Because when we are talking about gossiping, we need to see, okay, many times we are the victims, but many times we are the ones who are spreading that. We are in both situations. We are not in a perfect world. We are not perfect beings yet. So we can see ourselves in both situations, and that's why we need to see how to avoid being the one who is spreading those gossipings, and how to act when we are the victims of gossiping. So that's what I brought these teachings. And now let's see a little more about the gossip in our lives. So here I brought a study from that was published in the journal Social, Psychological, and Personality Science in 2019. So Dr. Robbins and some colleagues, they found that they had this research when they found out that on average, during 52 minutes a day, the people that were in this research, like 467 people, they were gossiping. Like that was the average time that they spent gossiping. So imagine in a normal day, average human being, we spend 52 minutes a day gossiping. And it's very interesting here because they talk a little bit about 3 types of gossiping. Like in this study, they classify the gossip as neutral, as positive, as negative, because they say that gossip would be every time we are talking about someone else without the person being there. So they say that is gossiping. And then they say that can be something that are like the positive gossip, the negative gossip, and the neutral one. The neutral one, as they say here, were person spoke about someone who was watching a lot of movies to stay current, like something very boring, but they say wouldn't be considered as negative. And they said that in 3 out of 4 times the gossips were neutral. But even though they use this term neutrals, we say that many times we are saying that even though we may seem that as neutral, it can harm some people as well, because we never know how the other people are going to receive that information and process that information. And they also said that just a small portion of the conversation analyzed, around 15%, was deemed negative gossip, though positive gossip amounted to a smaller portion, still at only 9%. So let's do like this, like only 9%, let's see like good gossiping, or when they were talking good things about the person. So most of the time, like we say 91% of the time, they were being like neutral or negative. Negative, we can imagine when they really saw that information could harm others. But we can put all this neutral information in that group as well. So for us to see that only 9% of the time they were talking good things about others, but in 91% of the time we can see like this, we in society, we spend the time that we talk about others, telling things that may not be that good about them. And now I brought another research here just for us to have a little idea of how this news is spread today in social media. So this is a study from the University of Illinois at Chicago. So they were trying to see how the news is spread in social media. Actually, they wanted to see it also as a tool of marketing, how they can, for example, use the social media to spread some information about some product for some companies. But it's very interesting because that's why I brought it here, for us to see how fast those information can be spread. So they did like this model with 10,000 people, and they had among those people Democrats, Republicans, independent, and politically agnostic. And they saw that if three people, for example, if one people was receiving information about three people, any of them, so imagine if a Democrat was receiving any kind of information from a Republican, independent, or politically agnostic, or another Democrat, and if they heard that information and if they believed in that, it was spread very fastly to the whole society. So it only took one person to believe the information from three other people, no matter who they are. If that person was able to hear and to believe in that, it was very, very fast. Like in a few days, the 10,000 people would be receiving that information. And then they analyzed that if the same person, like if one person would hear the information, but the person needed to hear that information from different people. But for example, if I'm a Democrat, I will only believe in something brought by a Democrat. Or if I'm a Republican, I will only believe from information brought by another Republican. So in that case, the information would also be spread, but it would be slowly this spread. For example, so they said that from one people, it would need for 250 people to believe in information, so it would go to half society. So they were saying that because they wanted to show that at the moment that we do believe in anything that is brought to us, no matter who brings that information to us, for example, if we do not have any filter at all, so that information will be spread very fast to the whole society. But if we filter a little bit, if we select like the people who are bringing that information to us, so it will be like a barrier. So it will be, the information will also be spread, but not as fast as if we believe in anything that is brought here to us. So we can see these two models, and it's very interesting for us to bring those models to our own lives to see, okay, so if we filter a little bit, so if instead of receiving some information and also spreading right away, so let's see who is bringing that information. And we can think about many different ways of doing that. Can be who, like the people who are bringing information to us, if it is someone I trust, if it is someone I usually believe what that person is saying, or depending on the source of the information. If we are thinking about fake news, let's see the source. Where is this information coming from? It is coming from actually a website or some place that I trust, or is coming from a source that I never heard before. So from the moment that we start having those filters, this spread of fake news and this spread of gossip around our own society, it happens is lower. It doesn't mean that it won't happen, as they show here. It will happen anyway, but at least we can we can allow that to be spread in a different way than to fastly spread to the whole society. And now, coming back to Spiritism, so let's see what the spirits tell us about gossiping, about bringing us information, and about watching also information that others bring to us. So here in the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 10, the chapter Blessed are the Merciful, number 20, we see Kardec asking, is it reprehensible to observe the imperfections of others if there cannot be any profit for them, and if one does not disclose them? So actually, okay, with what we can do when we observe the imperfections. And I brought this question here because let's bring again to social media and bring the example from Instagram. For example, we know that Instagram is a place where we basically go to see pictures of others, and what we see today, many of times we see pictures of what others are doing in their lives. So we see people going on vacation, we see people on the doing their daily work, daily activities, and it's very easy for us to go there and to observe the imperfections. Many times can be like the physical imperfections are that person lost some weight, that person gained some weight, that person is looking older, or that person is looking younger, something happening in that person's lives. So it's very easy for us to find those imperfections and to observe those imperfections. And not only that, we can assume by seeing the way that the pictures that the people are posting, that how they're living, what they're doing, and we can also make some observations about the life they are having in our eyes, if there's something good they're doing, something bad that they are doing. So it's very easy for us today to observe, to judge, and to make conclusions. So that question from Kardec is very good for us to bring today. So let's think about that. It is reprehensible for us to observe those imperfections when we open our Facebook, when we open our Twitter account, or how can we act there? And then the spirits say, it all depends on one's intention. Certainly, it's not forbidden to see evil when evil exists. It would even be inconvenient to see only good everywhere, since such an illusion would hinder progress. What is wrong is to turn these observations for the detriment of others by decrying it unnecessary in public opinion. It would be reprehensible to do it only to indulge ourselves with a feeling of malevolence and joy for finding others in fault. So let's see what the St. Louis is telling here. So it all depends on one's intention. So the first point here is for us to, okay, from the moment I open that and I see that, and I try and I start immediately to see some like some evils or some faults that I think the other people are having. So why am I seeing that? What is my intention in pointing that out? So the first question that we would ask ourselves. So very important here for us to see that is also something for our, like, knowing ourselves. So let's try to know ourselves. Why am I pointing that out when I see here, as they say here, it is only the detriment of others. So it's something that I'm going to point out that information and to tell someone, see, did you check that picture? Do you see that a person is like traveling again? Yeah, spending the money and something like that. So like some bad comments that I may bring. So it's also about that. What's the intention with that? What am I doing with that information if I'm going out there in the public opinion and spreading that? So what's the point of that? So that would be something imprehensible. And also they say here, this last part, when we do that, only for us to feel joy for finding others in fault. So it's like the example of the tax collector and the Pharisee. The Pharisee was bringing those gossips to God because the Pharisee wanted him to feel that he was a better person than the tax collector. And many times we do that in our lives when we are going through on social media. We see what others are doing and how they are acting, and we go and try to find their faults because it may us feel better than those persons. So it is a way for us to compare ourselves to others, but not in a way that, okay, I see what the other is doing good, so I may follow that path. I may see in that person an example, something that I want to do in my life as well. Well, no, many times we go because we need to see that in a way for us to feel joy by finding the other's fault, so we can feel that, okay, I'm a better person than that one, I'm in a better position. So it's something that we many times we do, and even if we don't spread that information, if we do not gossip to other, many times we do as the Pharisee, we do that gossip to God or to ourselves, because we know in Spiritism, when we are thinking, we are already creating that images and creating those words around us. So we have, as Paul of Tarsus said, a cloud of witness around us. So we have many spirits around us. So those spirits, they are seeing that. They can feel what we think. And by doing that, we are also attracting some other spirits who may feel the same or think in the same way. So even though when we think we are not gossiping, we may not be gossiping out loud, but there are always witnesses around us, and we are always attracting those spirits that are thinking the same way we are. So we can imagine those gossips in the spirit world, they happen as well. It's not something here that we happen in the physical world, but we do have some friends or some people around us, some spirits around us, who may also think the same way that we are thinking. And now I brought this text by Joana de Angelis. It is a page psychographed by Divaldo Pereira Franco. It was in 1988 in Santa Monica, California, here in the US. And in this, it is a beautiful text about words. And so I brought some parts of this text for us to think how we deal with those words online as well. So Joana de Angelis said, the word that brings evil has been responsible for lamentable wars, just as the one that becomes a messenger of understanding and lucidity has been able to intermediate and achieve peace. How we can use that information online. Many times we may start wars online with the words that we use. How many times can we see some posts on Facebook, for example, especially now that we are in this time of, here in the US, election time. We have the country very split between at least two sides. And how many times we see some wars with the words, like people go and post something on Facebook or on Twitter, and there goes another one and reply that, criticizing that. And when we see, we have this whole war online. So we can use those words from Joana de Angelis about the word that brings evil has been responsible for lamentable wars, and try to apply that when we go online, so we can easily spread some bad words, some bad news online, and we can easily harm others online as well with the words that we use. But in the same way, we can use those words to achieve peace. So it always depends on the way that we use the words, no matter if we are using that words by speaking or by typing. So we can use those words by Joana de Angelis and try to put those words on our online activity as well. And she says, talking is a science and an art. Science because it must always be a messenger of wisdom, impregnated with love, bearer of faith. And art because it must be clothed with the corresponding modulation to what it informs. So let's think about that as well when we are spreading some information about others. That what we do, it is both a science and an art. But do we use the words in that way? Do we talk that way in our daily life? So how do we act on social media when we are like typing or putting something out there, a new post on the Facebook or Twitter, or even when we are sending a message on WhatsApp or on a text message? So how do we do that? Let's imagine if we start to think about all this talking as a science and an art, and all this love that we can bring with the words. Why are we using many times the words with this speech of hatred, with this speech of evil, or many times as a weapon to harm others? Because even many times we don't do that like intentionally, but we can harm others with some information that we spread about those people around us as well. Let's just going back to the gossip, even when they say those gossip were neutral, okay, it may be neutral to our own eyes. But for example, in that example that the scientist brought, that he was only talking about a person who was watching some boring movies. Okay, but just by saying that, if I go and I say to a friend, oh, okay, that person was just watching some boring movies, it may be neutral, but in a way, I'm already criticizing that friend because I say, yeah, he doesn't have a good taste with movies. See, he spent his afternoon watching some boring movies. So even that is a way I'm not bringing love, I'm not bringing anything positive. So if I'm not bringing anything positive, why will I bring that information? And also, Jonah D'Angeli says, thinking before speaking results from the conquest of moral and spiritual values that dignify man. So this one, I would like us to hold this information because later we're going to see Jesus' example, and we can see, of course, with Jesus' example, how he always thought before speaking and all the results that he brought with that. So another from Jonah D'Angelis, from The Happy Life. This one is a very good teaching for all of us. Keep quiet about what you hear. People would spare themselves a lot of heartaches if they knew how to listen and reflect. Unfortunately, many rush to spread the news, altering its content and stressing the sensitive or negative points. So that's something that happens a lot. We have this rush to spread the news, like we want to be the ones who are bringing breaking news to others, can be to a group of people, can be to someone close to us. Many times we have that rush is something that happens to us, like we have some information, we need to spread information to another person. But why do that? Let's keep quiet a little bit and to see, as Jonah D'Angelis is saying here, why I'm going to spread so fast something that I heard about someone else, as in the example of Brother X, that woman heard that conversation, she wasn't bringing the whole story, so the content was the correct content, and she was stressing only the negative points of what she heard. So how many times don't we do that in our lives? We don't see the whole picture. For example, if we are coming back to the Instagram example that I gave, if I'm seeing someone like posting a picture in a very beautiful place on vacation, for example, and I go to another friend and just comment, see, that person is wasting his or her money with those vacations. And many times that person is complaining about money, but see, he's spending another vacations here or that, but we do not see the background, what is happening in that person's life. Maybe that person had this vacation as a gift from a family member, from a friend, from their company. Maybe it's a work trip, and that person had a time to go to that beautiful place, take a picture, and to post that picture online. So many times we don't know, or most of the times we don't know the reality, what is happening in the backstage of a situation that we see online, and we rush to some conclusions and we spread those conclusions to others. So let's think a little bit about this. What Jonah D'Angeli is saying here, keep quiet many times is the best solution. Keep quiet because many times we don't know what really we are talking, if it is true or not. And also, she also says, fragmented accounts and adulterated stories have the magical power to disturb, creating conflicts and unbearable situations. Don't spread toxic information. And that's true many times. Those, when she said the magical power to disturb, magical, we all can also say, because as we have this rush, this willing to spread information, many times we go there and we spread it, and we can create very different stories, as we saw in that example. Okay, that example was a tragic example by Brother X, but how many times we don't replicate that in different, in smaller proportions in our own lives, and we hurt other people's lives, we may hurt other people's relationships with some little information and not true information that we spread about those people. And John de Angelis also says, listen calmly without jumping to conclusions. If you wish to comment, do so benignly and as if you were the one involved in the situation. So this last part is very important, as if you were the one involved in the situation. So all the time, let's put myself in other people's shoe. Let's see, okay, if I were in that situation, how would I act? Would I like to receive that comment? Would I like to be criticized? Would I want that information to be shared with so many people? So it's very important that teachings that we learned so many times from Jesus, from the high elevated spirits, like put ourselves in other people's lives to see how they are feeling, how they would feel when we do something that may hurt them or may not hurt them. But let's always try to do that before we act, because in that way, it's going to be something useful to us. It's going to be something useful to the others as well. And so here, as I said, learning with Jesus. So let's go back to the book Good News by Humberto de Campos, the first example that I said, because as I said in the beginning, Jesus was being victim of gossiping. So as we always learn from the spirits, the high elevated spirits in the Spirits book, Jesus is our model. So we should follow always Jesus' example. So let's see Jesus' example and to see how he was handling that with the gossiping. So how all of them reacted to the poisonous insinuations. So Humberto de Campos says here how the disciples were reacting. So he says, Peter and Andrew defended the cause of the master with incisiveness and sincerity. James became upset with his companion's analysis. Levi protested, expressing the desire for organizing public debates in order to clearly show the superiority of the teachings of the Messiah when compared with the scriptures. So here we can see very different situations, very different reactions that we have. And let's try again to put those examples in our life on social media. So many times we can be as Peter and Andrew when we try to defend. If we see someone being criticized online, we go there and try to defend, and we write, we comment, trying to defend that person, trying to say good things about that person. So that's when we see those wars online. Like I mentioned, when John de Angelis said that the words can create some wars, and we can create some wars online. So many times we create those wars online because we go and we comment, and someone else goes and comment in another way, and we go and comment again. And when we see we have those huge posts, those huge texts online, that many times that post doesn't help in any way, because it's only many people talking about some subjects, some topics, and we are not going to change other people's mind, but only by saying something online, because many times all of us, we have already our mind set in this or that information, and just by reading online, it doesn't change anything. And many times we don't really read at all the comments that we have on the posts that we see online. And many times we can be as James, and we can become upset. So we will see that, we will see those gossips, and we will be very upset, and we will live with that sadness inside of us. So we can have that reaction. Those gossips are hitting us, and they are changing our mood. They are changing our environment and all the vibrations around us. So as I previously said about we having that cloud of spirits around us, so by changing that vibration, we are also attracting some spirits that will be in the same vibration as us. So we'll be sad, we'll be upset, we'll be depressed, and we are sharing, we are having more spirit, attracting more spirits around us that are feeling the same as we are. And Levi protested, expressing the desire for organizing public debates. How many times aren't we acting as Levi? So aren't we, okay, we see something happening and we want to organize some debates, some online debates, and we want to, like, we see something, we post on something new, or we send some different message on a WhatsApp group, trying to convince many people to act this or that way. So those were all the reactions that we saw with the disciples, and we can bring those reactions to our own lives. And then comes Jesus. What did Jesus do? Jesus understood the circumstances and calmly ordered the withdrawal from Nazareth, leaving the town with a tranquil smile. So Jesus didn't change his mood. He was still smiling. He was quiet. He kept quiet, as Joanna D'Angeli said. He didn't start any word wars, any arguments. He wasn't trying to go to those people who were talking bad things about him and to ask, why are you doing that? Don't you see that I'm not this person that we are talking about? So he didn't try to do anything that as they were. He just stayed in that with his calmness, silent. And this example, there's a very good book that I like a lot, Jesus in the Home by the Spirit Neo Lúcio, channeled by Francisco Cândido Xavier. In that book, we see we have 50 lessons from Jesus talks in Simon Peter's house, and it's very, very good. That book I highly recommend anyone who'd like to read that book, because we see this example of Jesus in almost all the lessons. Jesus always was silent, allowing everybody to talk before him, and then he gave the teachings. He gave his final word with serenity, with a smile. So that was the reaction that Jesus had in every daily situations. And we have more. What else did Jesus say? Jesus said, would we be able to pick up grapes in the bramble? I would not in any way engage in an sterile argument with my opponents in Nazareth. However, I made sure to teach that the best example is always the one from our own work, the one from our most useful effort possible. So instead of engaging with arguments with them, Jesus was teaching by his example. And that's what we see in the gospel. That's what we see in many of those books that later were channeled by many high elevated spirits, as this book, The Good News, Boa Nova. We have many examples that we can see Jesus teaching by his example, through his example. So that's the way that Jesus acted. So he knew that he didn't need to go and to reply to those arguments. He didn't need to start some wars with the others. He was just doing his work. And that's something that we can try to do as well. Instead of reacting or overreacting many times, try to stay calm. It's not easy. No, it's not easy. Of course, it's not easy. But I think by seeing Jesus' example, at least we see that it is possible. So someday it will be possible for us to act like Jesus, but we can at least try not to become not to overreact to anything that we see online. And the last one, Jesus said, what would be the use of long public debates filled with mockery and sarcasm? At the end, we would have only lesser chances for the triumph of glorious love and stronger motives for division and hateful opposition. So he's saying, why are we engaging in long debates, public debates? So that's what I said many times. We go on Facebook, on Twitter, especially, and we see many people arguing, many people having those wars online. And like we see from different sides, one people that believes in one thing that the other doesn't, then they keep arguing. Then, and we see they're not going to change their opinion just because somebody else is going to write a text about what's happening there. So why waste that time doing that? As Jesus says here at the end, we would only have lesser chances for the triumph of glorious love and stronger motive for division and hateful opposition. And so that's the same when we are victims of gossip here. There's no need for us to react and to go and try to convince people with the words. The best way for us to show who we are is by acting with it, is by our example. And as I said in the beginning, the name of this chapter by Humberto de Campos, chapter 10, is forgiveness. And the reason that the chapter is forgiveness is because at the end of this talk, of this story, when Jesus is being the victim of those fake news, and in the end, Simon Peter asks that famous question to Jesus, how many times should I forgive my enemies? 7 times. And then Jesus says 70 times 7. So Jesus is teaching us the lesson of forgiveness. So for us, if we are victims, the victims of gossips in our life, online gossip, in-person gossips, the best way for us to deal with that with forgiveness. So that is a beautiful lesson that Jesus brings to us, and that we can actually, and we should try to bring the lesson to our social media life. Try always to forgive if we are victims of something that we don't like, if we see something that we don't like, and also ask for forgiveness if we act in that way. If we are the ones who are spreading those gossips, if we are the ones who are spreading the fake news, we should also be humble enough and ask for forgiveness if we offend someone else, because it's very important for us to see here that we are, at the same time, we can be the victims and we can be the ones who are spreading those gossips online. So that's very important for us to keep that in mind, and always to ask ourselves, okay, so why am I posting that? Why am I spreading that? Is something useful or not? So let's try always to follow the example from Jesus as we saw here. Okay, thank you so much. Back to you, Marcia. I'm sorry, I'm not listening to you. Don't know if you're mute.
I was mute. I'm
Okay,
I'm
now.
very sorry. Thank you. So thank you. It's great talk. Very, very contemporary. Love those stories. In fact, it sounds like a lot of the shows that we stream online from Netflix, etc. But anyways, we are open for questions and for comments from the audience. We have about another 15 to 20 minutes. So let's go ahead and get started. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So the first one, someone said, Marcelo, you mentioned that at Jesus' time, there were no news outlet. So the best way to spread information was through gossip. Today, social media, in many ways, is replacing official news outlets or reputable news outlets. How do we, all of us, learn to separate what is true and what is false?
That's a very good question, especially today that we see the spread of fake news so fast and so easily. I think one of the best points for us to see, as I said first, the source of what we are spreading. So many times we can see some headlines from some outlets, and when we go to see, they are not actually a trustful outlet, or they're not actually that real outlet, because we may see some people creating some fake websites trying to pretend to be the real one. From here in the US, they can be very similar when we see visually very similar to CNN, to ABC, to CBS, and to many others, and we, at this first moment, we think that is the official one, but it is not. So it's very good for us to check if it is coming from the right, from a good source or not. And even if it is from a good source, they can always be wrong. So many times it's good for us to check, okay, it's coming just from one place, from more than one place. How did they check that information? So that's the best way, I think, for us not to spread, because through it's very easy to spread fake news, and we see that very commonly online on Facebook, Twitter, and today with WhatsApp. It's very easy for any one of us to receive those news on WhatsApp and immediately forward, many times without really clicking the link and reading the news. That's something very interesting too, because many times we only read the headlines and we already think that we know that information. But if we read the text, if we read the entire news, many times the headline is not what is saying in the text. So that's something that we should always do as well.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it. There's another question here. The big challenge we have nowadays is to verify reliable sources of information, right? Just a good segue to what you said. Could you share, Marcelo, some tips on how we can do that?
Yeah, so that basically that we can to verify the information or to some reliable source. And also, as I said many times, we could have a reliable source. We could have like a really media news outlet, but many times journalists, they have, as I said, that rush to give the news, to be the first who are breaking the news. So many times we can see someone bringing breaking news, and some moments after that news is not always the true or the right one, because it is very important. So also especially when we are seeing something that we think, okay, is that really true? If we have some doubts, it's very good to try to see 2 or 3 different sources, 2 or 3 different outlets, and also to see if they are checking themselves, because many times we see, okay, this newspaper A gave that information, and we see the same information in newspaper B, C, and D, but they're just like replicating the A one. So just saying according to news A and according to news A, but it couldn't verify the information themselves. So it's very important, especially when we have a breaking news, especially when you have some kind of news there, we don't really think it's true or not. Let's see if we can find that in other places, and if those other news outlets, they could verify the information as well. And the same can apply to our own life. If I hear something about a person, okay, but is that really true? So if 2 or 3 different people bring me that information, so okay, maybe that's really happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that. So Tiago Tiberio said, so is positive gossip good?
Thiago, that's yeah. Let's think like in that research, they say that neutral, positive, and negative, but they say that all the gossips are they say that gossip is when we are talking about someone and that person is not there. Mm-hmm. So that's something that we need to ask. Okay, but even if I'm talking something good about a person, it's something that a person wants me to share. Is that really something good? Just to give an example, there are many people who do good work, who do charitable work, but they don't want to show off. They don't want others to know they're doing that. So if they do that in very quiet and very silent way, let's say that, and I go to others and say, see, that person is doing a good charitable work, and I think I'm doing something good, because I'm talking a good information about that person. But if it is something that person does, that also when I saw that, I also need to talk about others, then I may compare that with the small talks that we have in our society, because like we here in the US always talking, one of the examples that we give here about the small talks when you're talking about the weather Like we meet someone, see, it's going to rain today. It's very cold, or it's going to snow or not. So we have those small talks. And I think many times we use those gossipings as small talks. Okay, did you see that what this or that person do? Or like we have a friend in common, that's something that seems very obvious for us to talk about, that common friend that we have. So I think many times we do that. It's something that we do maybe to start our conversation, or maybe to engage in a kind of talk with someone else. But what to do to stop that? That's a very that's a very good question.
And I would say, right, the small talk has no impact. And as you mentioned before, speaking ill or not about a person, there is an impact, spiritually speaking, to that person, right? So very good thought, good parallel there.
Yeah.
Do we have another? Yes, we do. So here it's a reference to the story, right? The story about the Pharisee and the tax collector. And it provides a good lesson about looking ourselves and focusing on what is driving us to gossip about others. So very related to the other question, but can you talk more about it from that perspective?
Yeah, I think that's something that always happened to us, because many times especially when we are acting as the Pharisee and criticizing others and trying to see what the others' fault for us to feel better, how many times that happens in our own life? For me, that happens a lot. Like I see something, some vices in others, because I just want to feel that I'm a little better, that I'm not that worst person that I think that I am. So I need to see other people acting in a negative way, so I can say, okay, so that vice, that fault, I don't have. But how many others do I have? In the same way, all of us, if we are here on Earth in a planet of trials and expiations, it's because we have a lot to learn. So none of us here is a perfect being, is a perfect spirit. But it's not up to us to try to weigh and to see who is doing better than other. It's not a competition here. The only competition that we have with ourselves to improve each day more and more. So I think the best way for us is to see that we are not here competing with each other. We are here as a society, to improve our society, to improve our world, and to improve ourselves. So it's not by seeing others people's faults that I will think that I'm in a better place. But as in the gospel as well, the next question, I brought the question 20 from that chapter, Blessed are the merciful. If we go to the other question, also St. Louis, he talks a little bit about, but if it is I'm checking that only to learn from those examples, so that may be something positive, but that's something that I'm checking other people's fault to learn from that, but not to spread that to others. And especially when praying, like in the example of the Pharisees, I'm not giving God all the vices that I saw in others, so I can say, see God, I'm being a good person. No, not doing that, but trying to see with their example something that I don't want to do myself. So in that way, it can be positive, but never like bringing that information to others.
Correct. Very good. Let me see if we have another question. Yes, we do. Spiritism teaches we're always progressing. What is the progress that you see in social media, and what does it bring to us?
I think especially today we can see in the Spiritist movement all this good progress that it's bringing to us. We can today use social media to spread the teachings that we have, Jesus teachings, the high elevated Spirit's teachings. We are doing so many lives now in the times of pandemic. We see many Spirit centers, they are physically closed, but we are still open and connected with social media. So I think especially today, we can see all this progress. Imagine if we were now in the pandemic without the social media, we would be feeling more alone. There would be more people depressed than we do have today. So I think social media is a very good tool that we have today. It just depends on how we use that tool.
Very good. Very good indeed, right? For us to ponder on the impact. Marisa said, thank you, Marcelo. And I think we have one more minute. Marisa mentioned, I love the stories too. And Kirsten says, love the stories in Boa Nova. Truly an underrated book.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for bringing us that. Lots of good stories.
Yeah, and a big fan of Humberto de Campos, and Boa Nova is a really, really good book.
Yeah, excellent. And Abigail said, like Chico Xavier says, keep water in your mouth if you don't have nice things to say. Thanks, Abigail.
That's a good lesson.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
All right. So as we come to a close, I want to say thank you, Marcelo. Thank you, everyone who is here watching this live talk and those who have been following our weekly talks. Next Saturday, it will be November 21st at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Please don't miss Luis Lima. Luis will be speaking about the aspects of divine justice. Marcelo, before we close the live, can you please say a prayer?
Sure. So let's take this moment to close our eyes, elevate our thoughts, and thanks our dear God, our brother Jesus, and all the good spirits that are here with us, bringing us this good news to our lives. We thank you for all the lessons that you bring, and we ask you to allow us to understand each of the teachings and to know how to apply them in our daily lives. And we ask you for us to be able to use all the tools that we have today with the new technology, with social media, as a way for us to spread the good news and uplifting messages to our brothers and sisters that are here with us in this journey on earth. Thank you so much, dear God. May your light and all your blessings be with all of us, in our homes, in our minds, and in our hearts. Thank you so much, and so be it.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend and keep safe.